This is an APC9 This is easily one of my favorite 9mm PCCs. I love this firearm because of the quality, because of the recoil buffering system back here in the rear of the action. It's just a very pleasant, well-made gun to shoot, and I love it. But suppressing this thing requires the use of subsonic ammunition if you want to run a silencer on it. So you'll notice this has a tri-lug barrel on it, and I have a silencer co suppressor. There's no magazine in the weapon. The bolt's locked to the rear and unsafe. You put the tri-lug can on it, and now it's suppressed, but with a 124 grain ball or 115 grain ball, it's not going to be super quiet because you're still going to get that bullet breaking the sound barrier downrange, which gives you a very distinctive and loud crack. But it does suppress it back for the shooter, and it does bring the overall sound down. So a few decades back, H&K produced what was called the MP5SD. It was a machine gun, submachine gun designed with an integral suppressor that worked in conjunction, the firearm worked in conjunction with the suppressor to take a standard supersonic round and slow it down inside the barrel and inside the suppressor, where it was now subsonic and much more quiet. Some people would say it has about the power of a 380. I don't know. I haven't done the math on that, but it would take a standard, say 124 grain ball round, make it subsonic, suppress it, and make for a very, very quiet firearm. But you're trading speed, right? So you're getting less speed, which some folks didn't like. I think the concept's really cool, and so did B&T, because they made an APC9-SD that has an integral suppressor, which we will show you here in a minute. But first, I'm going to fire off a few rounds out of my baby here. We have some Federal 124 grain ball. This ammunition is supplied to us by our friends at Federal, and we greatly appreciate them supporting the channel with ammunition. If you'd like to pick up some Federal or any other brand of ammunition, please swing by and check out 2awarehouse.com. Bunch of good guys over there and some really good prices on ammo. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the bolt on this, and I'll shoot into the dirt first, and maybe you'll be able to pick up that sonic boom even though we're fairly close to the dirt here. All right, and I'm just going to shoot some steel here with it really quick. Some more dirt. And it locks open. So I've really increased the length of the firearm, but I do have the option of taking the suppressor off and stowing it separately. But you still have to use subsonic 147 grain ammunition if you want to make it at its peak of quietness. Let's take a look at the SD. This is the APC9SD with its integral suppressor. You'll notice right away that it has a much larger aluminum handguard here, and then you can see the suppressor, which is really quite big. It comes all the way back to the receiver here is the suppressor, so it goes over the barrel, which we'll show you in the video. And this is a Gen 1 gun, and this one came from Copper Custom. Originally, when the first shipment came in, they sold out very quickly. Copper's expecting one more shipment of the Gen 1 guns, and we don't know when the Gen 2s might actually show up. In Gen 1, APC9s have a reciprocating charging handle and different controls on the lower. So I don't mind the reciprocating charging handle because it's out of the way. My hand's up here, and I'm not going to put my thumb over it because the charging handle pretty much sets over the magazine well. But yeah, these are very, very cool. Now, also keep in mind that this gun is a one tax stamp gun. You're going to have to pay a $200 tax on the suppressor. The pistol itself has an SB Tactical side folding brace. If you wanted to SBR this, it would become a 2 tax stamp gun, meaning you would have to put a tax stamp on the Form 1 you would file to put a stock on it, and then you'd have to pay the $200 tax for the suppressor. So how does this bad boy work? The minute you fire a round, it taps gas off, slows that bullet down to subsonic speeds, and then the suppressor does the rest by suppressing the propellant gases. So the bullet should not break the sound barrier. The APC9 we opened up the video with, the 124 grain rounds that we shot there, were definitely breaking the sound barrier. Even with hearing protection on, I could hear the crack downrange, and I couldn't hear the bullet hitting the dirt. So now we're going to fire some of the exact same 124 grain Federal ball rounds out of this. And today's pretty cold, guys. Actually, can't see my breath right now, but earlier, about 10 minutes ago, you could actually see my breath. So it's right around the high 30s right now. So the air density is fairly high. But let's see if these rounds are subsonic or not. Fire a couple rounds here into the dirt. Even with my ears on, I can hear the bullet hitting the dirt. I'm going to break one of my ear cups loose to see what this sounds like. Very, very quiet. I can hear the action of the gun clicking, and I can hear the round downrange hitting the dirt, shoot into the trees here. I can hear it go, I can hear it knock on the wood there. And let's do some shooting with some steel. I'm gonna put my ears on though, because dare I say, the round hitting the steel plate at this range is probably louder than the gunshot. Look how nice and flat this thing shoots. Guys, that's cool. Now, H&K did it with their original HK MP5SD. They're doing it now, they being B&T, with the APC9, and I think it's really, really cool. Some folks are going to argue that it's slowing that 9mm pill down so much that it doesn't have any more power than, say, a 380. I don't care. I think it's cool because I don't have to go out and buy more expensive subsonic loads that are 147 grain. I can get by with the cheap stuff, and I can suppress it to its maximum potential because the gun is slowing that bullet down. Pretty cool stuff. Let's take a look at how the suppressor and how the gases are vented off from the cartridge work. To take the handguard off, you have two screws back here, which I've already loosened just for the sake of time. I'm going to go ahead and unscrew the B&T silencer and take it out of the gun. All right, that's how big the can is. It's a very, very voluminous can. Now they have that out, I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver and remove the two screws holding the handguard in place. Pull a little screw out, take out its counterpart there. And now once those are out, the handguard should pop off when you pop the pin out. So we'll just use this to get the pin started. Pull that pin across, and now the handguard is free to come off the gun. Now you're going to see how this works. That's your barrel, and you see these vents? Those vents are just in front of the chamber of the firearm. And look how many there are. So the second you fire the round, it immediately starts tapping off propellant gases to slow that bullet down. The bolt just went home, but the weapon is safe. It went home because I have the pin out here in the front. But yeah, it starts tapping those propellant gases off and pushing them into the suppressor. That was screwed into place. So those gases are venting straight into the suppressor. The bullet exits. It still has quite a distance to travel as that powder is burned and contained by the large voluminous suppressor. So that is how this gun works, and it's very similar to how the older MP5SD worked, pretty much the exact same way. It vented propellant gases very early after ignition, vented those gases directly into the suppressor, and then the suppressor was considerably longer than the barrel of the gun. So I thought that was really neat to see. I was surprised at how many holes there really are in that barrel. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool how they accomplished that. And again, it was something that HK had done with the SD decades ago. Now when you get the gun, it's going to have a big nut screwed down over those holes, and the can won't be on the pistol. So you'll have to use a wrench, get that nut off, then you can put the suppressor on, because the gun is designed to fire with or without the suppressor. That nut, again, will just cover up those vent holes that allow the propellant gases to be tapped off. We have some of the 124 grain Federal ball rounds, and we have our lab radar set up so it's running in Doppler mode, which means it's constantly scanning for a bullet to fly out in front of it so it can give the speed. The other triggering mechanism is a pressure sensor, which we normally use, but with a suppressed firearm, there's not enough sound or pressure to trigger that switch, so we have to run it in Doppler mode, which means sometimes it may not pick up a shot depending on where I'm aiming out there. So let's go ahead and arm the lab radar and fire off a 124 grain round. Guess it helps to let the bolt go home. 1,004 feet per second. So to give you guys an idea of what supersonic is, at sea level at 68 degrees, it's right around 1,125 feet per second. So as you can see, it's definitely colder than that, and we're about 800 feet above sea level here, but it's still subsonic according to the lab radar. 1,020. 981, so we got quite the spread. 991, we'll just do one more for good measure. And there you go, 977. So it's definitely taking that 124 grain bullet and slowing it down quite a bit. Let's see what happens with 115 grain bullets. Now we have some 115 grain ball. It pretty much looks just like the 124 grain, but this is 115 grain. 5 rounds loaded. Fire up the lab radar and see what we get. 1,098 feet per second, so it's still subsonic. Very, very close. 1064. 1072, 1049, and 1062. So the 115 grain bullet's moving just a little bit faster, but it's still subsonic. That's pretty cool. So it does mean you can shoot the affordable stuff and still get the same type of suppression without the sonic boom. The Gen 1 guns have flip-up polymer sights that are non-adjustable, which you can see there. So they are truly backup sights. You don't want to wind up using these as your primary sighting option. You want to put a red dot on there, or if you want to run irons, get some aftermarket iron sights. As you can see, the 1913 rail on the receiver stops right here. Then it continues out here on the handguard. All right. Do some more shooting with this thing. On the Gen 1 guns, your bolt release is ambient. It's right here above the mag release, which is lower down. So to release the bolt, just push that button, put it on fire, and have some fun. Oh, she didn't lock open that time. Huh, I wonder if I have a bad magazine. Let's try it with one more. Locked open that time. I think one of my magazines went bad. Now you will find that the B&T mags, like a lot of other mags on the market, Scorpions and things like that, the Strybog, you're going to find that the magazines are all polymer, including their feed lips, and leaving them loaded could potentially be detrimental to the longevity of the magazine. So taking a look at the magazine that failed to lock open and another magazine, you'll notice there's a little tab right there by my index finger. That tab has broken off the follower of the magazine that failed to lock open. So the magazine still works, but it's not going to lock open anymore until I replace that follower. And the follower on these is polymer as well. So that's why it didn't lock open. I did break a mag. This is my SBR, the standard APC9, not the SD. I have some 124 grain bullets, the silencer coke can on the end. And we're just going to see what these things do across the chronograph here. $11.95. So I could definitely hear the sonic boom downrange. They are breaking the sound barrier. Definite crack. 12.10. 11.83. Keep in mind, guys, you can see my breath. We're in the 30s right now. 1201, and one more. You get the idea, 1200 flat. So that SD system is really working good. Let's quickly go over the controls of the Gen 1 APC9s and then do a quick disassembly of the gun to show you how it works on the inside. So with the Gen 1 guns, you have a reciprocating charging handle. This charging handle can be used on both sides of the gun during the disassembly process. When you reassemble it, you can put the charging handle over on the right-hand side. All the other controls are ambi. The only other thing that's not ambi is the ejection port. Only ejects out the right-hand side. So you have a safety lever, a bolt release, and a magazine release on the right-hand side of the gun. On the left-hand side, safety lever, magazine release, bolt release. To lock the bolt open on the Gen 1 guns, there's a little button right here in front of my index finger. It's just behind the mag well. You're just going to push up on that button with your index finger, pull the bolt to the rear, and that will manually lock the bolt open. On the SD, if you want to add additional pick rails, you can screw those in up here, or you can move these forward or back, however you want to use them. And this is an aluminum handguard. Okay, we know the weapon's clear now. I'm going to go ahead and let the bolt go home, and these pins can be tight. There's zero slop in these guns, so I'm going to go ahead and drive this rear pin out. It has a pin in the front and the rear, much like an AR-15. Pull the pin across, and the lower will hinge down. Inside, you're going to find what looks like an AR-15 fire control group. It's very much like one. The gun has an amazing trigger, as you can probably tell by how fast I can fire it. Very light and crisp and short. To take the brace off, you're just going to pull down. It is under spring pressure, and walk that off. And there is the hydraulic buffering system that really mutes the recoil of this gun and makes it shoot so incredibly flat. It's amazing how much of a difference that little piece actually makes. All right, to take the bolt out, I'm just going to pull it to the rear, and then I can actually got to take the recoil spring out first because it holds this pin in place. Take the recoil spring out. You want to remember that the dome, or the hat looking piece, is going to face out, and the end with a little dimple on it is going to go in when you put it back together. And now I can pull the pin out, and that dimple that I just talked about rides right there in the pin, holding it in place. And set that aside, and then your bolt will drop right out, and it's a standard blowback bolt. Very simple, easy to maintain. Put it back together, just drop the bolt in. This is where you can put the charging handle on the other side if you would like to. You can put it in from the left or right hand side. I'm going to put it back to this side because that's the way I like it. Push the bolt home, make sure that the little dimple faces forward, slide that into your bolt. This takes a little bit of practice. Kind of push down and up, and it will lock into place. Hinge your pistol grip and lower assembly up, and drive that pin home. It is a captive pin, and with these SB braces, they can be a little bit tight on that rear pin. All right, and there she goes, ready to do some more shooting. The APC9-SD is a very cool firearm. It is not inexpensive, but it's still really cool to see it on the market. It's probably not going to appeal to a lot of folks. I mean, you're going to like it, but the price is definitely going to turn a lot of folks off because there's other options out there that are a fraction of the cost of the B&T. But if you like Swiss quality and you like things that are awesome, you just can't go wrong with an APC9 of any variant. The K gun, the standard, the SD, I love them all equally. Now, what's interesting this afternoon, though, I've been shooting B&Ts for quite some time, and they use a universal magazine, the TP9, the GHM9, the APC9. They use this universal magazine, and I finally broke one. And I broke the little tab that's the bolt hold open. So that's the first time I've actually had one of their polymer mags fail, but it's worth noting. Guys, if you would like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best way to do that is to become a Patreon supporter. We answer to you, not to the gun manufacturers or importers. We answer to our supporters over on Patreon. If you don't like Patreon, there's also a Subscribe Star link down below. So either check out Patreon or Subscribe Star and consider supporting us here at the Military Arms Channel. And last but not least, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. All right, let's fire off the last 30 of the afternoon. And thanks for almost 12 years of support. It's almost 2020.